Monetize hope.
Elon Musk is either the greatest tech visionary of our time, or he's running the most successful pump and dump scheme in human history. I'm going to show you which one it is today in this video. Look, when the richest man on the planet makes a prediction, billions of dollars move. Stock prices surge, millions of people reorganize their entire worldview around what he says is coming. So this is really important, and we need to know if he's telling the truth. Here's what I want to look at today. First, I took a look back at every major prediction Elon's made about AI and robotics over the past decade. I'm talking specific promises with specific dates. Then we're going to see what actually happened. And what I found is going to change how you see this guy forever. But we're not stopping there. Then we're going to take a look at what he's promising right now. AGI by the end of this year, robots in your home by 2027, robo-taxis everywhere by next year. For each one, I want to examine if it's possible. I'm going to take a look at the technology behind each claim, and I'm going to give each one a plausibility rating. Then, at the end of the video, we're going to connect the dots together. I'm going to show you a pattern here that's undeniable once you see it. And understanding that pattern is going to tell you everything you need to know about why Elon is making these claims in the first place. Okay, let's get into it. So let's start by looking at what Elon promised in the past. I want to establish a track record here because that's the only way to know if we should believe what he's saying now. I want to go through a few predictions he's made about AI and robotics, and for each one, I'm going to tell you what he promised, when he promised it, and then what actually happened. Let's start with cross-country autonomous driving.
Tesla car next year will probably be 90% capable of autopilot. So 90% of your miles could be on auto.
Full autonomy is about 3 years. 3 years, approximately 3 years. I think we're basically less than 2 years away from complete autonomy. Safer than a human.
Won't have to ever touch the wheel by the end of 2017.
Yeah, essentially November or December this year.
I think probably by end of next year, self-driving will encompass essentially all modes of driving and be at least 100 to 200% safer than a person by the end of next year. We're talking maybe 18 months from now.
Feature complete and self-driving this year, to say that we think people do not need to touch the wheel, look out of the window, sometime probably around, second quarter of next year. I'm extremely confident of achieving full autonomy and releasing it to the Tesla customer base next year.
When do you think Tesla will solve level 4 FSD?
I mean, it's looking quite likely that it will be next year. My best guess is that we'll get there this year.
In terms of suddenly it will.
Yeah, suddenly 3 million cars will be able to drive themselves with no one. Fully autonomous, unsupervised FSD, Texas and California next year.
In 2016, Elon said your Tesla would be able to drive itself from New York to Los Angeles by 2018. Completely autonomous with no human intervention needed at all. So what actually happened in 2018? A Tesla crashed using the basic summon feature. We're talking about a car that couldn't even reverse out of a driveway without hitting something. Forget about New York to LA. This thing couldn't even make it 20 feet. Fast forward to 2026. Right now, 8 years later, it still hasn't happened. We still don't have cross-country autonomous driving. Okay, next up, we've got the robo-taxi promise. In April 2019, Elon promised that Tesla would launch a robo-taxi service in 2020 with 1 million vehicles on the road. He told Tesla owners they'd be making $30,000 a year in profit by letting their cars drive around as autonomous taxis while they slept. Wow, that sounds pretty crazy. Here's what actually happened. The service launched in June 2025. That's 5 years late. It's only operational in limited areas of Austin, Texas, and the cars still have human safety monitors sitting in them. That's not autonomous. This is just Uber with extra steps. But here's the crazy part. In 2023, there was a lawsuit against Elon for securities fraud over these exact robotaxi claims. Do you want to know how this got dismissed? The judge ruled that his promises were something called corporate puffery. That's the legal term. The judge literally said his claims were too unrealistic to be taken seriously as actual promises. But the even crazier thing to me is that this corporate puffery rule seems to give Elon a license to lie about his companies in order to hype them up as much as he wants. Now, I want to talk about that a little bit more later, but for now, let's move on to his next claim about AGI.
I think we'll hit AGI next year in 26.
Elon has been playing this game for years. In 2024, he predicted AGI would arrive by 2025. Now it's 2026 and there's still no AGI. At Davos in January 2026, he just moved the goalpost. Now he says it'll be here by the end of this year, or no later than next year. He's just been making AGI is coming next year predictions repeatedly. Every time he's wrong, he just pushes the date forward and makes the exact same claim again. It's like a kid saying, "I'll clean my room tomorrow" every single day. Eventually, you stop believing him. Finally, let's look at the Optimus robot. In 2022, Elon said the Optimus humanoid robot would be production ready by 2023, ready to manufacture and sell. October 2024, Tesla holds an event to show off the Optimus robots. People were impressed. The robots were walking around, interacting with the crowd, even serving drinks. They looked pretty autonomous, except they weren't. The robots were being remote controlled by humans backstage. Tesla did not disclose this, and they let everyone believe these were autonomous robots when they actually were just expensive puppets. People only found out later when the truth actually came out. So there's your track record. 5 major predictions and 5 complete failures. But here's the more important question. If he was wrong about the past, why should we believe anything he says about the future? Next, let's take a look at his current predictions and see if they hold up any better. So now we're going to take a look at what Elon Musk is promising about our future. For each claim, we'll dig into the technology behind it, we'll take a look at the evidence, and we'll give it a plausibility rating. Let's start with AGI. Now, just to be clear, AGI stands for Artificial General Intelligence, which means AI that can perform any intellectual task a human can do, not just specialized tasks. Now, Elon says we'll have it by the end of this year, 2026, and no later than next year. He also claims that by 2030, AI's collective intelligence will exceed all of humanity combined. As we saw in the last section, Elon has made this claim many times before. It's never come true in the past, so why should we believe him this time? I don't think we should. Now let's take a look at this article here from Gizmodo to back up what I'm saying. They said, Musk's treatment of AGI or any new technology largely depends on how he can hype his companies at any given point in time. The perpetual prospect of achieving AGI, whether you think it would be good or bad for the world, helps drive investment in AI technology, the thing that seems to be propping up the entire US economy at the moment. Now, I think that's exactly what's happening here. He's just trying to hype the technology that many of his companies rely on. But let's take an objective look to see if this is even possible. His main AI effort is Grok and XAI, which are both LLM-based systems. He's alluded to other approaches occasionally, but there's zero evidence that these exist. There's no papers or demos or anything. So that makes the fundamental question, can LLMs become AGI? Now, I've covered this in depth in several previous videos, but I'm going to go over it here briefly because I think it's critical. LLMs are pattern matching machines. They don't understand language. They recognize statistical patterns in training data. When you ask ChatGPT a question, it's not thinking. It's predicting what words should come next based on millions and millions of examples that it was trained on. When an LLM encounters something outside of its training data, it hallucinates. It confidently tells you something completely wrong because it hasn't been trained on the situation. If you've used LLMs before, you know exactly what I mean. This happens fairly regularly. So the important thing to remember is that AGI requires actual reasoning, understanding, and planning. It needs to be able to reason through complicated and novel situations without hallucinating. Scaling up LLMs does not do this. It just creates better prediction models, which now have severe diminishing returns on investment.
We are not going to get to human-level AI by just scaling up LLMs. This is just not going to happen, okay?
Now here's something critical. Back in 2022 and 2023, people believed AGI was coming because the chinchilla scaling laws held strong. Now, these laws showed that if you doubled the compute, you roughly doubled the performance of an LLM. The growth was clearly exponential, but those laws broke down in late 2024. Let me explain this with an example. Think about a newborn baby. In the first month, a baby might go from 7 pounds at birth to 11 pounds. If that growth rate continued exponentially, by the time that baby turned 50 years old, it would weigh over 400,000 pounds. Obviously, that doesn't happen. Growth slows down and it levels off. This is what happened with LLMs. The growth has leveled off. We've hit a ceiling, and doubling the compute no longer gives you double the performance. My plausibility rating for AGI in 2026? 0 out of 10. Because LLMs cannot become AGI. There's simply no chance of hitting it. For superintelligence by 2030, I am also giving it a 0 out of 10 chance. For LLM specifically. Now, maybe there is a 1 out of 10 chance that there's some other technology that could potentially reach AGI, but I highly doubt it. The one thing I can say for sure is that it is not going to be LLMs. Now, let's move on to autonomous vehicles. We're talking about fully intelligent cars using AI, specifically Elon's claim that Tesla will expand the robotaxi service across the entire United States in 2026. Your Tesla now becomes a self-driving taxi that makes you money while you sleep. Now, currently, this service barely works in limited Austin, Texas areas only, and human monitors are still in the cars. Elon Musk says, meanwhile, that this is going nationwide in 12 months. Here's what you need to know about the technology. Tesla's full self-driving uses neural networks, which are essentially LLMs for vision instead of text. The system is trained on massive datasets of driving scenarios, and it pattern matches. It sees a situation on the road and predicts what to do based on similar situations in the training data. It's the same LLM technology we discussed. It's got the same fundamental limitations, and when it encounters something it hasn't seen before, which is outside of its training data, it tends to hallucinate. Take a look at this article from NBC News that I'm putting up on the screen. 2 US senators urged safety regulators to investigate Tesla's full self-driving, or FSD, after complaints that the software sometimes fails to detect oncoming trains at railroad crossings. The article quotes experts in autonomous technology who said Tesla's FSD software is a black box AI model in which errors can't be easily explained even by its creators, and that Tesla engineers most likely hadn't included enough railroad crossings in the videos they used to train the FSD software. That's the pattern matching problem right there. If it's not in the training data, the system doesn't know what to do. It'll just hallucinate something on the fly. The same way ChatGPT makes up facts when it doesn't know something, Tesla's full self-drive makes driving decisions up when it doesn't know what to do. Here's a real-world example. In April 2022 in Spokane, Washington, a Tesla owner used the Smart Summon feature to call their car. Now, this car drove through the airport lot and crashed directly into a parked Cirrus Vision jet worth over $2 million. Now, the system had never seen a jet before in its training data, so it didn't understand that it needed to avoid the jet. It just drove straight into it. Even a tiny 0.1% error rate can result in plenty of fatal accidents. Every novel scenario becomes a potential tragedy, and the novel scenarios encountered in driving are literally infinite. The chinchilla scaling problem we talked about also applies here. You can't just train it more to fix the hallucination problem. Pattern matching fundamentally can't reason through novel situations. And for that reason, my plausibility rating on this one is 1 out of 10. The technology literally cannot do what he's promising.
When do you think Optimus will be a better surgeon than the best surgeons? How long for that?
3 years. There will probably be more Optimus robots that are great surgeons than there are all surgeons on Earth.
Next up, the Optimus humanoid robot. Elon has 2 big claims here. First, he says you'll be able to buy one by the end of 2027. And second, he predicts that robots will exceed surgeon capabilities within 3 years. But let's take a look at where we are right now. Back in October 2024, Tesla held an event to show off the Optimus robot. People were impressed. The robots were walking around, interacting with the crowd, they were serving drinks. It all looked very autonomous, except it wasn't. The robots were being remote controlled by humans backstage, and Tesla did not disclose this up front. Take a look at this article from Verge, which I'm putting up on the screen. After the event, they reported that attendees who interacted with the robots noticed that they were speaking with a delay and their responses seemed scripted. One engineer said it was clear they were being remotely operated when you actually interacted with them, but Tesla did not make that clear. For Optimus to operate autonomously, it needs to understand commands, process visual information and make real-time decisions, navigate unpredictable environments, and adapt to situations it's never encountered. All of this relies on the same LLM-based neural networks we've been talking about. The robot processes what it sees through pattern matching. When it sees something outside its training data, it hallucinates. Think about surgery. Every patient is different. Every surgery has unique complications. When the robot encounters anatomy it hasn't seen in its training data, it will hallucinate. Also, the chinchilla scaling problem applies here too. You can't train your way out of hallucinations. So Elon's timeline is 2 years from remote-controlled puppet to autonomous home robot, and 3 years to performing surgery better than the best trained surgeons. Meanwhile, Boston Dynamics has worked on humanoid robots for over 30 years and still doesn't have a consumer product. So my plausibility rating is a 2 out of 10 for robots for sale in 2027. They may sell something, but it will not be autonomous. And it's a 0 out of 10 for surpassing human surgeons in 3 years. LLM technology simply cannot do this. And finally, we have Neuralink. Elon says that everyone will have a Neuralink brain implant by 2030 or 2031, and that these would replace smartphones as our #1 way of interacting with technology. Now, right now, Neuralink has just started limited human trials, and as of late 2025, only about a dozen people worldwide have received these implants, and all of them have severe paralysis. The company is still in the experimental phase, and it's not FDA approved for widespread use. Now, here's what the timeline looks like. 5 to 6 years to go from a dozen experimental patients to billions of people with brain implants. This requires mass manufacturing at a scale that's never been done before. It requires FDA approval for general use, which typically takes 5 to 10 years. It requires approval in every country worldwide. It requires insurance companies to cover it. It requires long-term safety data that we don't have yet. And most importantly, it requires people to actually want this. We're talking about elective brain surgery. You're drilling into your skull to install a device. Take a look at this NBC News article I'm putting up on the screen. They reported on public sentiment around brain implants. A survey found that 69% of Americans said they would not want a brain implant, even if it was proven to be perfectly safe. The main concerns were long-term health effects, the idea of a company having access to their thoughts, and simply not trusting the technology. And who can blame them? Honestly, I wouldn't want one of these things in my head. You couldn't pay me any amount of money. But here's the technology question. How does Neuralink interpret your brain signals? The interface between your brain and the computer uses neural networks. Again, these are LLM-based systems. Your brain's electrical signals get translated through pattern matching, the same pattern matching we've been talking about throughout this entire video. If the system hallucinates what you're trying to communicate, that's a serious problem. We've seen what happens when LLMs hallucinate. ChatGPT confidently tells you wrong information. A Tesla drives into a jet. What happens when that system malfunctions inside your brain and starts to hallucinate? I can tell you right now that I will not be getting one of these. And in my personal life, I don't know a single person who would willingly get a chip put into their brain, especially after learning that it's based on the same technology as ChatGPT. Can you imagine having a device in your head that gives you the same kind of outputs as ChatGPT, making things up with complete confidence? That sounds like actual hell on earth. No thank you. Now, my plausibility rating for this one is a 0 out of 10. Maybe a few thousand early adopters by 2030, people with medical conditions who have no other options, but mass adoption where everyone has one, the timeline is physically impossible given regulatory requirements alone. Not to mention, nobody actually wants this. So let's tie this all together. We've seen what Elon promised in the past and what actually happened. We've examined what he's promised about our future and whether it's even possible. Now the real question. What is he up to? Take another look at that Gizmodo article that I mentioned before. Elon's treatment of these technologies largely depends on how he can hype his companies at any given moment. The perpetual promise of AGI, robotaxis, humanoid robots It all drives investments and keeps valuations sky high. So here's what I think he's doing. Some of Elon's companies rely heavily on LLM technology, such as Tesla with their full self-driving, Optimus robots depend on it, XAI and Grok depend on it also. So he's out there making these bold predictions because it pumps up the valuations of these companies. Just take a look at Tesla's stock over the last 10 years. It's justified by promises of future robotaxis and autonomous driving, not by current sales. XAI's funding isn't about what Grok can do now, it's about the promise of AGI. The public is getting tricked by these promises. A lot of people bought Tesla stock based on what he said. So far it's worked out for them, but I think the stock is massively overvalued with quite a lot of room to fall. The problem with all of this is that LLMs are just pattern matching machines. They can't reason, they hallucinate when they encounter novel situations, and life is constantly presenting novel situations. The hallucination problem will not go away. In situations where you need to be right all the time, LLMs simply cannot get the job done. When you're driving, you only have to turn into oncoming traffic once. Surgery only has to go wrong once. These technologies will never be reliable in real-world applications that require perfect accuracy because they're fundamentally limited by how they work. If you take the time to look at what he's actually saying, quite a lot of it is nonsense. There's basically no chance of it happening with current LLM-based technology. Now remember, that 2023 securities fraud lawsuit about the robotaxis claim, it was dismissed because the judge ruled his statements were corporate puffery. The legal system said his claims were too unrealistic to be taken seriously as actual promises. Now think about how ridiculous that is. That's basically a license to lie about your company. You can make up crazy hype, you can make up lies about future capability, and as long as you keep it vague enough about the timelines, you're covered under corporate puffery. How does that make any sense? The legal standard is no reasonable investor would rely on these statements, but unreasonable investors do rely on them. They buy the stock, they believe the hype, they make financial decisions based on what he's saying. Then when it doesn't come true, the defense is, well, you shouldn't have believed him. It seems pretty unfair to me. The pattern, however, is undeniable at this point. Make bold predictions, miss the deadline, push the timeline forward, rinse and repeat. It worked to build his companies to where they are now. The promises that never came true have made him the richest person alive. So why would he stop? The next time you see Elon promise AGI next year or robots in every home, I want you to remember this. Check his track record. Look at the technology and ask if it's even possible. The pattern isn't just clear anymore, it's his entire business model. Now, if you enjoyed watching this video, please hit that subscribe button. I've got a lot more coming like this soon. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.